Hi, everyone. It's Kristan Hawkins, and welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. As you know, we have started a new season, Abortion Crimes. We wanted to kind of make this a kind of a true crime themed season, as we realize every abortion is a crime. But we want to talk about the most heinous cases, those who've been committing abortions illegally, those are harming women, and not only just killing children. And so today, I'm so excited. Our guest is joining us from Serbia, where he's hot on Hunter Biden's trail. He can talk about that in a little bit. But Phelim McAleer, I've known Phelim and his wife, Anne, for a number of years. Phelim is a veteran investigative journalist, a New York Times bestselling author, filmmaker, podcast host, playwright, and one of the world's leading crowdfunders. You might have recognized his name because if you were around in the pro-life movement a few years ago, there was a really big movie that came out called Gosnell. And Phelim and Anne were the geniuses behind that film of taking the transcripts, the court transcripts, the district attorney's reports of what was happening in Philadelphia with the abortionist Kermit Gosnell, who was operating a legal abortion facility and was actually charged and is now spending the rest of his days in prison for killing women and committing illegal late-term abortions in his abortion facility there in Philadelphia. But Phelim and Anne, they took what was happening and was not getting any press coverage, by the way, by the mainstream press, and they turned it into an incredible movie. And I hope you've tuned into it, or if, at least after this podcast, you'll make sure you get a copy of it. They launched a crowdfunding campaign to fund this movie. And I think to date, it was the most successful movie project ever crowdfunded on the site Indiegogo. They raised over $2.3 million from more than 30,000 people. Students for Life and all the other national pro-life groups were helping raise money for this film. So we were all so very proud of it when they came out. It was the #1 DVD on Amazon in America when it finally went to DVD. The book, I believe, sold out within 3 days on Amazon, was Amazon bestseller. Uncovering what was happening in Kermit Gosnell's abortion facility. Phelim is also, and I don't want to go into your long CV here, but has produced a number of events and releases, documentaries. The most recent one was a theatrical event. And I have to read this title so I don't mess it up. FBI Lovebirds Undercovers, which was a verbatim play exposing how top FBI operatives tried to destroy President Trump's campaign and his presidency by starting the Russia collusion investigation. And it was when it was released, it had some high accolades. Politico called it the Hamilton for the MAGA crowd. So that's a pretty great title, Phelim. So Phelim knows how to find stories and how to tell stories that are underreported today, our mainstream press, which is why he's in Serbia right now, and I can't wait for him to tell us what's going on. You should also check out, he and his wife Anne have a podcast. It's the Phelim and Anne Scoops podcast, where they talk about underreported stories. So I don't want to go into everything else in your bio. You can tell me what I missed, Phelim, but thanks for coming on and joining me.
Thank you, Kristan. Always a pleasure to come on and talk to you and talk about true crime and talk about stories that aren't covered. Two of my favorite topics.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I met you years and years ago. You had done a fracking documentary. Mm-hmm. They were talking about, how fracking is terrible for the environment. And you actually went to states like Pennsylvania and talked with real people and got actual real facts. So you've been doing this for a long time. You weren't just, some random pro-life guy that was like, I'm going to make a movie. You are a journalist who finds these stories that no one is telling. And so I think that's what was so exciting when you learned about what was happening in Philadelphia with the Gosnell trial, that you were able to kind of hone in on this story. Because I feel like sometimes in the pro-life movement, we're always like, hey, pay attention to us, pay attention to us. And it's frustrating because a lot of times, our pro-life news, life site news or life news will report stories, but they never get taken to the broader public. But you guys made this movie with the help of tens of thousands of people, and it was everywhere. I think Dean Cain was even in the movie for the Superman.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. And I like the way you phrase it. I'm not some random pro-life guy, because when I started the Gosnell, I'm not even sure I was pro-life. I mean, I wasn't pro-life, in a sense. I just saw it as a story that wasn't being reported. We describe ourselves as neutral on abortion. And, reality is, if you're neutral on abortion, you're pro-abortion, really. How can you, and so I was a random journalist who walked into a random courtroom in Philadelphia. I was there covering the fracking story. I was there promoting the fracking documentary, and I had a day off. And as a journalist, not as a pro-life activist, I looked up the local newspaper to go and, because this is what journalists do in their day off. It's very sad, really. They go to courtrooms and listen to murder trials, right? So there's an interesting murder trial on, and I went in, and there in front of me was Kermit Gosnell, this mass murderer. But on the wall to my left, they'd blown up the pictures of his victims, and then in front of me was the most shocking. And I've covered murder trials in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, baby trafficking. I've covered everything, and this evidence and these photographs and Gosnell, that was one of the most shocking pieces of evidence I've ever seen. But the most shocking thing of all was behind me was the row after row of empty press seats. I'm going, what's wrong with journalism? Why aren't they covering this? This is no matter what your politics are, whatever happened to the old journalism thing, if it bleeds, it leads, This had everything. This is a hot topic like abortion. This had murder. This had a doctor. This had a race element. A lot of his victims were black. The doctor was black. The people prosecuting him were white. There was just so much going on. As a journalist, I just felt this story needed to be told. And I got back to LA and told Anne and Magda, we should cover this story. We should do something with this. And they said, we don't do abortion. It's like, those people are crazy kind of thing, And it's like, and I said, I ordered the transcripts, and they read the transcripts, and they came to me and said, we have to do this. Like, this is the only story worth doing now. And, we kept, it took a long time to prepare to launch the Gosnell crowdfunding campaign and to launch the whole thing. And all through, we're thinking, somebody else is going to do this. This is too good of a story for some journalists to not do. And of course, that's exactly why they didn't do it, because it's a really good story and it'll make people think again, and maybe it'll change their mind. And that's the last thing they want people to do, is to change their mind, because the truth in this story is absolutely compelling. And I was telling someone last night about it, someone on the production team who's I think they're pro-abortion, pro-choice, whatever you want to call it. But their jaw was hitting the ground when I described what he did illegally, but also when I described what a legal abortion was, and the difference between his illegal abortions, legal abortion. People don't know. The Planned Parenthood are geniuses. They've managed to let people think that abortion is not something that it's not. Sorry for the long answer there, but it's a great story.
No, I think that's so important to say that, because like right now at Students for Life, we're on tour. We're finally back on campuses, and we have this tour called See Me Now, and we have virtual reality goggles, and we have we're using our good friends at Live Action did some videos, and so we took these videos and we actually made them 3D. And so there's fetal development, but then also we have an abortionist describing an abortion procedure. And this, to us in the pro-life movement, is like common knowledge that these children are being destroyed and dismembered, and to see the minds change that we're having. I mean, just with the conversations we're having. We're getting 52% of the people we're talking to are joining us in the pro-life movement, signing up for our club, taking our bumper stickers, pledging to support women. 10% are on the spot changing their mind about abortion, which is huge considering people don't ever like to admit that they were wrong, when you start a conversation. But I think we sometimes forget that people truly don't know the horrific nature of abortion, just legal abortion.
Absolutely. 100%. They do not know. And who was it? Was it Tammy Laren or one of those young reporters on? She got a really terrible time for saying she's pro-choice, and it's like, like she doesn't know, right? She doesn't know what an abortion is, and by the way, the top echelons, as I've discovered, the top echelons of the anti-abortion movement is peopled by people who used to be pro-abortion. You know, I mean, I don't know if you were pro-life all along, but you're in a minority, I would say. You know,
I am.
It's full of idiots like me who believed the propaganda. You know, it's not even propaganda. You know, it's just they're very, very smart people. The pro-abortion, pro-choice people. They're very smart people. They have all the good tools, all the good media, and you know, we shouldn't be. I know it's tough, but we shouldn't be too hard on people because they don't know.
They really don't.
They don't know. They think it's a blob of cells. They think, you know, I mean, if you read Anne's foreword to the Gosnell book, right, she thought that pro-life people photoshopped those photographs, you know? And I remember saying this to someone, and the person said to me, like, when you think about it, what did you think the photographs would look like? And I was going, of course, like, that's what they'd look like, you know? But, you know, no. And we're not dumbos. Like, we're journalists. We're out there. We're doing things. We're looking at things. We're in places where lots of people don't go, and we didn't know. So people don't know what a legal abortion is, and that's a great thing about the Gosnell story. Isn't funny, but I know I'm sure many of your listeners have seen the Gosnell movie, but we made the Gosnell movie for a couple of key scenes, and one of the key scenes was. The prosecution had problems. You know, Gosnell basically's defense was, yes, I'm dirty. Yes, I'm messy. Yes, I'm a bit slapdash. But abortion is a dirty, messy, horrible business. And you shouldn't convict me because it's unpleasant. And so the prosecution brought in a good abortionist, a proper abortion doctor, to show what the good abortion doctors did. It was the only time in the whole trial that the jury gasped, right? So they were seeing pictures of dead babies, dead women, dismembered babies, nothing. The doctor came on, gave evidence, and the prosecution, to try and establish their bona fides, you know, are you an expert in the field of abortion? Said, how many abortions have you done in your career? And the doctor said, 40,000. And the jury gasped because they'd never thought of it as an industrial process, right? You know, and you know, then they started describing what an abortion is, the dismemberment. Then they were asked, what happens if the baby is born alive? And the doctor answered very calmly, we give it comfort care. You know, and they were asked, what's that? And the answer is, you know, you make it comfortable. Eventually, the baby will pass. And it's like. Well, what's it as the defense team? What's the difference with what Gosnell did? He killed the baby. You're letting it die of dehydration and neglect. You know, so they almost screwed their own case by trying to show that there was this difference between the two processes. Sorry for grossing people out, but you know, as a journalist, those are very interesting things, and that's why we wanted to show people. We wanted to bring people into a true crime situation where they would learn things that they didn't know.
Yeah. I want to back up a little bit because if you haven't watched Gosnell, you need to. And where's the best way for people? Is it just I get on Amazon? Is that the best way to watch it?
Yeah, you can order the DVD. There's a link where you can watch it online as streaming, which I do not know the address of.
Things that your host should probably have Googled beforehand. I will put the link in the show notes though for sure. But you can Google Gosnell. I mean, yes. I know I have my copy, the book's on Amazon. But I want to back up. So if you're listening to this podcast and you've never heard about Kermit Gosnell, what Phelim is describing is the trial. So Kermit Gosnell was committing abortions in Philadelphia. I've been to his abortion facility. I don't know if you've been there lately. You can still go, and his name is on this. It's the most eerie thing. It's on this corner. It's in not a great neighborhood. They haven't touched it since the DA raid. So what happened was the DA, women were dying at this abortion facility. They went in, I think with a raid, correct me if I'm wrong, because of the narcotics use. Oh, yeah. Right?
No, women were dying and they didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. They didn't care. Women were being
Explicitly pro-life podcast, you're allowed to curse a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So, I always believe me. I'm Irish, and that's mild from So I don't know. I think your editing staff might have to work overtime on the bleeping machine if I get excited. But I'll try and stay within the bounds of acceptability. But I get excited. Women were dying there. Tom Ridge was elected governor of
Republican.
a Republican, moderate Republican, and moderate Republican, of course, means pro-abortion, pro-choice, whatever you want to call it. And up until then, clinics were inspected every year, and he said, "No, the law doesn't mean what the law says it means, and we're going to stop the inspections." 2 women died in Gosnell's clinics. Hundreds, if not thousands, of babies were murdered, and two women died. But until the police, what happened with Gosnell was he was selling opioid prescriptions. And feeding. He was one of the biggest opioid dispensers in the area, and it was only when they raided that house, that building, looking for evidence of opioid tracking. That was the first time anyone from the state had been in that door for 17 years. Even though 2 women, and it's hilarious. I don't mean it's hilarious. It's 2 women. One of them was an African American, and the other one was a genuine refugee from a refugee camp in Nepal. These are people that Democrats claim to care about, but they were killed by an abortion doctor. So therefore, they were collateral damage in the noble fight to keep abortion legal. And it was only he would still be at it if he hadn't started selling drugs.
Yeah, and you can still go online and get the pro-choice district attorney's reports, like 200 pages, because when they went in there for this narcotics abuse, for these illegal opioid prescriptions, what they found was babies in jars in the staff refrigerator, like where the staff were keeping their lunches cold. Yeah. There were babies in jars. They found baby's feet that had been, when he dismembered the child, he put the feet in formaldehyde and he was saving them. There were like 40 or 50 children found in the basement. They found waiting room. They found there was a white woman waiting room and a black woman waiting room. Yep. There was cat and urine and feces all over the place. They found maybe you can talk about this. There was a chart for the anesthesia they would give to the patients. And because he had teenage girls giving the anesthesia with no medical degree at all, they had the one girl I think had put stars and she basically color coded her system to make sure she hopefully wouldn't kill women.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, look, this was a money making machine. Actually, no, it wasn't. He's a serial killer. We have to be clear, and he kept trophies. The baby's feet were cut off and kept in jars, and he labeled the jars because these were classic serial killer trophies. And a normal abortion is gruesome, but what he was doing, and I don't want to gross people out, was he was giving women, at 30 weeks and 25 weeks and 26 weeks and 32 weeks and 34 weeks, drugs to make them go into labor. And they would give birth to a live baby, and then he would stab the baby in the neck with a pair of scissors. And eventually what he would do, he trained his staff to do that. And they thought it was just part of the abortion procedure, and then, yes, his chief anesthesiologist was a 15-year-old girl. And yeah, she had color coded, so do you want to be knocked? And she would say to people, do you want to be knocked out? Do you want to be still awake? Do you want to be almost knocked out? And so if they said almost knocked out, she had yellow, and she color coded her bottles of medicine so that the people would be yellow. And so, and to be fair to this girl, she never lost a patient. It was only the nights she was off when any other people were doing. Sorry for laughing. Doing these things. That's when the people died, and it was a house of chaos. It was a house of horrors, and it was allowed to happen because he was practicing the sacred right of abortion, which must be protected. And children can die, and women can die, but but people look the other way because of the need to protect abortion.
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating because you'll hear from the mainstream media and those who advocate for abortion, well, he was an outlier. This was an exceptional case. And Father Frank Pavone, he has a very, I think, very poignant phrase he says of, you can't practice vice with virtue. These are people who, when they get up in the morning and they go to work, their sole job is to end human life. They are not successful in their job unless a beating heart stops beating. That is what they do. So why would you be surprised of this behavior that's happening, inside of this abortion facility in Kermit. I mean, and he's not. And he's not an outlier. This is what, there was Douglas Carpin down in Houston shortly after, I think, the Kermit Gosnell case. The pro-lifers came up and said, wait a minute, we've been saying the same thing about this abortionist in Houston. You have Kloffner, who is in Indianapolis. Yeah. Or Ehrlich Kloffler, who for years they've been trying to shut him down, and the pro-lifers would shut down one clinic, and then he would open up another clinic, and you can listen to that in my last week's episode. But so this isn't a surprise. Like, this is, Mark Crutcher, I think in Line 5, that was one of the first books I read in the pro-life movement, where he just detailed from public records all of the misdoings of abortionists, their personal misdoings, the police and the records that they actually had before they even started committing abortions, then the stories. It's unbelievable. What were some of the biggest things beyond when you walked in the courtroom, Phelim, and you saw that nobody in the mainstream media was even covering this because it was about abortion? What were some of the most shocking things that you learned about what was happening in Kermit Gosnell's abortion facility there in Philadelphia?
Well, actually, funny, the most shocking thing I learned was what a legal abortion is, actually. That, and to me, that changed my mind. And that's what people, because you can argue, oh, he's just an outlier and he was practicing illegal abortions. And it's all nonsense because, there's no people are breaking the law in abortion clinics. The law is a terrible law, but there is no oversight on abortion clinics. He wasn't even qualified. If anyone had walked into that abortion clinic, there was cats. There was turtles. There was inappropriate waiting rooms. There was black waiting rooms, white waiting rooms, black treatment rooms, white treatment rooms. There was babies in fridges, as you say. There was a million different. He was involved in a 1973 botched abortion experiment called the Mother's Day Massacre. It was in his clinic. He was then able to go off to the Bahamas for 10 years and came back and escaped prosecution and opened his clinic. So I suppose the most shocking thing was what a legal abortion is. Second was just they will never, ever voluntarily close down an abortionist. They will never, ever voluntarily prosecute an abortionist. They are a protected species because it's the new sacrament. It's the new whatever it is. It's something that you should almost the women who died, they're almost like they're martyrs to this. But they're not. It's not like the people. They're not martyrs because it's other people saying it's okay for them to die. They're an acceptable collateral damage of this progressive need to kill babies. And it's I suppose the most shocking thing is what a legal abortion is and what the extent of legal abortion. Someone has done 40,000 abortions. And then the comfort care thing, that was, and the woman and we have the transcript, the woman in the court, or the doctor in the court, he said it like it was common knowledge, and it is common knowledge. And that's why Ralph Northam, really, the Planned Parenthood was so angry with Ralph Northam because he let the cat out of the bag. He said out loud what everybody within the abortion movement knew. So, the whole story was shocking from beginning to end. But actually, people need to know what a true abortion, what a good abortion is. And when you have people knowing that, there'll be a lot less abortions.
Absolutely. It's the whole thing that, the dark, it happens in the darkness, right? So you have to bring it to light. Light is always the biggest disinfectant there. Yeah. I find Kermit Gosnell's this terrible case of these women dying, the 2 women who were killed, the babies he killed illegally. Yeah. It brings to light some of the laws that the Planned Parenthood will fight against. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we were out in front of the Supreme Court. There was a Louisiana law that had common sense safety protocols. So if you're an abortionist in Louisiana, you had to have a relationship with a hospital within so many miles of your abortion facility in case something went wrong. So you could quickly get her files to the doctors, communicate with what the ER, what was happening, why she was coming in. And the abortion industry went to the Supreme Court and they won. And they literally argued that access to abortion was more important to women in America than safety, than making sure that there were safe abortions. And that's why Kadamaya Marngar, who died, she was the refugee you mentioned, died there at the Kermit Gosnell facility, was because of one of these common sense things that the abortion industry commonly argues against, which is to make sure hallways are wide enough for gurneys to get through. Because when they finally called EMTs when she was coding, they couldn't even get to her.
No, they couldn't get her out either. And they couldn't get machinery in. So, look, there's laws, and then the laws have to be enforced. And, and let's be honest, some of the pro-life laws, they're designed to make abortion more difficult for people. But some of them are actually designed to make it to make it safer for women. But it's almost, what I saw with Gosnell, it doesn't matter what laws you have. If you're in a blue state or a blue city.
No one enforces them.
Sorry?
No one enforces the laws.
No one enforces them. It's Gosnell was supposed to send in reports every week about how many abortions he did. He was, 2 women came out of his. The cop interviewed, the cop who was chasing down the opioid dealing. He interviewed one of the workers, and she mentioned casually, that was 3 weeks after that woman died. And he goes, "What woman?" And they told her, and he put her details into the police computer. Every unexplained death in America, where the police are called, they get a file number. It doesn't mean that they're investigating. It's just, we were there. There was no file number for this woman. She was a forgotten woman because she died in an abortion clinic. She went in healthy, and
something happened during the trial where did you see that there weren't there pediatricians who testified in Philadelphia that they weren't sending their patients there anymore because they were getting STDs, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he was reusing single-use instruments and infecting his patients with STD. Look, I could discuss your listeners with details of his clinic for a week. He was reusing single-use instruments and medical equipment and passing an STD from one woman to another. And all these women were arriving at their doctors with STDs, and the one thing they had in common was they'd all just had abortions at Gosnell's clinic. And the doctors saw this and wouldn't refer their patients to Gosnell, but most of them didn't report to him either. Because the last thing you want to do is become that doctor who's trying to draw attention to the abortion industry in a negative way, And one thing you said earlier, the media didn't touch it because it's about abortion. The media didn't touch it because it's shown a negative spotlight on abortion. The media will talk about some woman in Texas who has to travel to Oklahoma to have an abortion, or some, they're not averse to covering abortion. They just don't want to cover something that makes abortion look bad. It makes the abortion industry look bad.
That's so sad. And it's like it's a dereliction of duty. If you're a physician and your patients are coming to you affected with STDs because another doctor isn't using sterile instruments, that you should be bound to make sure you report that. The other law beyond the harming women is the infanticide laws. So we're still having a battle. We need 5 Democrats in the House of Representatives to sign a discharge petition to force Nancy Pelosi to bring a vote on the Born Alive Infant Survivors Act. So that would say that, doctors and nurses, if they witness a child being born alive during an abortion, which we know from what you said earlier, Kermit Gosnell was doing because he was birthing them and then killing the children, that they would be held liable for not offering care to the child, not comfort care as life-sustaining care, like oxygen, so they don't suffocate, which is what happens to children when they're born early. And we can't get enough Democrats. There's only been like a couple of Democrats. I don't know if any Democrats have signed this. There's like only 2, or maybe 1 now pro-life Democrat. I think there's only 1 pro-life Democrat in the House of Representatives, Harry Kular, who, I mean, he called the cops on us when we were protesting him. So I don't know how you classify that pro-life or not, but he says he's pro-life. No, well, yeah, the other one lost in his primary. So there's one. I don't think any Democrats even signed this discharge petition to force Nancy Pelosi. She won't even call a vote on this. Yeah. And then their argument is, well, this is unnecessary. Infanticide doesn't happen. This is just a scare tactic of the, the pro-life right, the extremists who want to scare people about abortion. But what you're saying is this happened in Kermit Gosnell's clinic.
It happened a dozen times a day. More. The grand jury. The way they say a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, right? And they'll basically do what they're told. This was actually the grand jury in Gosnell was very interesting. They sort of became independent. So the district attorney said, "These are the charges you should bring," and they said, "Yeah, we hear you, but actually we want to charge Gosnell with 200 murders, right?" And the district attorney goes, "Okay, well, why don't we just do 7? They goes, no, 200, right?" And they went to the cops, and the cops said, over our dead body, basically, they said, "We're not having our homicide statistics spiked by this grand jury because they want to show declining murder rates." Look, this goes on. There's no doubt that Kermit Gosnell, Philadelphia is not some rural town in Mississippi. Like it's Philadelphia. It's a few hours from New York. It's got the most vibrant, one of the most vibrant media situations in America. It's got international reporters based there. It's not some rural backwater where there's no system of reporting. So if it's going on in Philadelphia, and we know what's going on in Delaware, we know what's going on in Louisiana, and we know that this goes on in Houston. So it's going on in lots of other cities and lots of other states. And that's okay. I don't know that. I'm not in the clinic, but it's more reasonable to assume that it is going on than to assume that it's not. That's from my journalistic experience. And I came at this, and I'm still coming at this as a journalist, not as a pro-life activist, right? I'm still looking at this. And as a journalist, if you look at the evidence in all these other cases, then you have to say, well, why wouldn't this be going on in other cities and other states? And the answer is, well, then it probably is.
Exactly right. What were the final charges that Kermit Gosnell received from the grand jury?
From the grand jury, he was 200 charges on the Late Term Abortion Act, but it was 7 murders of babies and 1 murder of Carnamaya Mungar. One juror thought that he had tried to do CPR on Carnamaya Mungar. He hadn't, but one juror did. So they convicted him on manslaughter of her and 3 murders of babies. And they were capital murders. So he was sentenced to. He was looking at facing the death penalty, and the jury. We talked to the jury; they were well ready to sentence him to death. But he did a deal with the prosecution, saying that if he accepted life without parole, that he would waive any right to appeal and accept the conviction. So he got life without parole, and then immediately started appealing his conviction. Because you know what, you can't trust a serial killer.
Well, Phelim, thank you so much for coming on. And I know you're there in Serbia, so the internet probably is going in and out a little bit. I can't see you, but I can imagine it's not great. But I want to thank you for taking the time to get on and tell us and remind us these horrific crimes that Kermit Gosnell committed, and also remind us that every abortion that takes place is a crime in America. So I hope you guys will go to Amazon, look up Gosnell, get the book, get the movie. I'll put the link in the show notes as well for you, and make sure you check out Phelim and Ann Scoops, the podcast, because like I said, Phelim's there in Serbia, is hot on Hunter Biden's trail. So I'm sure we can be looking forward to a new movie project coming out very, very soon. But thanks for your time today, Phelim.
No, thank you, Kristan. Look, I could talk all day about Kermit Gosnell, and if I sound excited, it is. I'm a journalist, and I just think this was a bit an honor to write this story and to tell this story. And it was an honor that baby boy A, right, who led Kermit Gosnell's conviction. I would say Baby Boy lived for a few minutes. He was born on the 12th of July, same day as Anne's father's birthday, same day as Anne's father. But, you know, just if you ever think you're not going to change the world, there's a baby out there who was born and lived for a few minutes, and he changed he changed people's lives. He changed our lives. He made us look again at the world. You know, everyone has an important role to play in this world, and that baby, you know, many of us live a long life and never do anything significant. He lived for a few minutes, and it was a pleasure to tell it. It was an honor to tell his story, to tell the story of these victims, and that's what journalism is all about.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, thank you, Baby Boy A, and thank you, Phelim, for being so brave as to be willing to tell this story. I know it challenged you and Anne and your entire production team, and I'm sure a lot of friends were asking you, why would you make an abortion story, and aren't you going to become one of those anti-abortion zealots? But thank you for seeing the truth in this story and bringing it to light. And thank you all for tuning in this week. Make sure you spread this episode far and wide. Spread the message about Kermit Gosnell, that he was not an outlier. He is just one of hundreds of abortionists operating in the United States of America, because every abortion is a crime, and that's what we exist to do, is to stop the violence of abortion.